Hello and welcome to my Inspired Human channel. I'm Desiree, and in this video I am going to give some advice to my reflectors because I am a reflector, and if you're just new to this system and you're feeling a little bit lost, this video is for you. So please stay tuned. I've got some important advice for you and some extra goodies at the end, so stay tuned. So if you're a reflector and you just happen to stumble upon my videos through a YouTube search, then be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notifications. Should probably make a note here that I'm not a human design teacher. I am a reflector, so that means that the human design information that I'm going to put out is not going to be consistent. However, this is my second video of the human design system, so you can guarantee that you'll at least get one video once a month. And in this video, I made sure that I covered all aspects of what I wanted to give to you and some advice if you're just starting out, especially if you are a reflector. So in addition to this video, I have a blog post. So in case it is a whole month cycle before I see you again or before I make another video about this, you can refer back to this video to get all the information that I'm going to talk about. And you can also refer back to the blog post as well. And also comment below because I don't have a big following now. So if you're lost or if you're confused or you need some help or some guidance in some direction, reach out. I'm here. I can help you because it's very difficult when you're first starting off on this path and just discovering that you are a reflector. And it's very, very important that you understand how important that is that you are a reflector. And I'm going to give you some insights from like my experience from understanding the human design and working with it and what it really means to you, because human design is kind of just like thrown into the spiritual community, and if you're just coming into the spiritual community, it's like, whoa, right? So many people are misusing terms like non-energy beings and empath and all this other stuff, and you have to understand that we're going to dive deeper than that. You're so much more than this surface level stuff that you might just be exposed to in the spiritual community. And be sure to watch this whole video because at the end I'm going to read some excerpts from a report that cost $100 that was very, very detailed. It was 130 pages long, and there's some very important information here about reflectors. So I couldn't copy and paste this and put it in my blog because that's copyright, but I can read it to you, show you where I got it from, and just say it's a review. So hopefully you find that interesting. So here is an example of my chart. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the type and what it means to be a reflector, our strategy, and go in a little bit more detail about waiting a lunar cycle and why that's so important. Also, our not self theme, our inner authority and definition. Your profile might be different than mine because there are 12, and your incarnation cross may also be different because there's 192. So even though I am a reflector, this is going to be my perspective. Like I said, every body graph is different, but I'm going to try to give you my perspective being a reflector. And if you don't kind of resonate with some of the things that I am saying, but you are a reflector, that's okay. Some things that like I experience here it can be a little bit different because like I said, the profiles are different and incarnation crosses are different. So just keep that in mind as we move forward. So a reflector, we are reflectors, and that's about 1% of the population, which is approximately 60 million people. So that's a lot of people to be a reflector. And if you look at your chart, you will notice that all of your centers are white and they're open. However, the numbers or the gates are going to vary depending on person to person. So let's talk about our aura first. So within the human design system, it is said to be around 5 to 8 feet. I like to use a 10 feet radius, and that means 10 feet from my feet, 10 feet from my head, 10 feet left, and 10 feet right. It's very important that you become aware of your own individual aura because this is where the term sampling comes in. And what that really means is, so whenever your aura connects with somebody else's aura, so if you're within like a 10 feet radius with somebody, you're going to, I say like plug in, or you're going to reflect back to them who they are, which means their tone, speech, body language, and just kind of like their own natural design. You're going to feel that and you're going to reflect it back to them. So if you hear human design teachers saying that like nobody actually sees a reflector, this is what they mean, because people, when they interact with you, what they're doing is they're seeing themselves. Now, this is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing for the people that we're interacting with because it just naturally creates rapport with people, and people love talking to people who are like themselves. So naturally people are just going to like you and they're going to want to be around you. But if you're a reflector, you're going to notice these things, because as a reflector we have a little bit of a higher level of awareness. So you're going to become aware that you are not being, I guess you could say, authentic or consistent when you're with this person or when you're with this person. And it goes a little bit beyond just like different rules that we play, right? Like if we're plugging into somebody's energy or aura, it's like, why am I so gossipy with this person, but in this person, I'm like angry, or with this person, I'm very talkative, but in this person, I'm very quiet. It's just because you're plugging in to everybody's different individual design, and what you're doing is naturally reflecting it back to them. And like I said before, this poses problems because we're aware that we're not being consistent. And consistency is something that reflectors, you could be a reflector, that you're trying to search for in things, and that can be really not a helpful thing because you are a reflector, which means you're not consistent. So who you are changes every 8 to 10 hours, but it's just that aspects of you change. There's still this whole part of you that should not be confused with having like no energy or no defined life force, or that you don't have a soul or any of that stuff. That's not what that means. It's very important that you understand the human design system in context to human design. We still live in a dualistic world. So we have our natural physical world, and there's still kind of like this unseen world. So understand that the human design is just a type of science, and it's a tool to help you understand your true and authentic self. At the end of the day, everything is still consciousness. Everything is still all one. It's just that your human design and your human experience can be explained this certain way as like being a reflector, and explained this way, but you still have a soul or consciousness or awareness, or this other aspect of you. So a lot of times whenever we hear like non-energy beings, or we don't have kind of life source in the spiritual community, this whole term about like energy and everything is energy is just really misused and misunderstood. So understand that whenever they say like non-energy beings, well, I mean, clearly you have life force, you're alive, you're breathing, there's prana, there's consciousness, there's chi, whatever you want to call it, all around us at every single moment. So don't confuse that term energy with like chi or prana. No. But you can think of like not having energy as like physical energy, because as a reflector, we do get burned out easily, especially because our life centers or our life forces change throughout the whole moon cycle, and that can be very, very exhausting. And because we don't have any definition, because all of our centers are white, it is hard for us to tap into like innate energy as like a generator or a manifesting generator. We can't just be like oh yeah, let's just go get energy to go run a marathon or something like that. Like that just doesn't come natural to us. It can come to us, but it depends on, the moon cycle, because as the moon shifts in its full cycle, what it's doing is it's connecting each one of the like gates in our charts. You saw those numbers that you see there, and what happens is sometimes we're manifestors, sometimes we're projectors, sometimes we're manifesting generators, and so forth. So because we're so wide open and the moon travels through all these gates throughout the whole moon cycle, we get to experience everything, right? So everything and like everyone. So this is where naturally we kind of get this higher level of awareness. And when I mean higher level of awareness, well, we see who's programmed and who's not programmed. Like we easily see the sheep. So I talk about a lot in my blog and a lot of my topics about these sheep that just sway, and they just go this way and they just go that way. And as a reflector, you're like, yeah, all these people here on earth are pretty much just like sheep. They'll blindly follow everything. So when I mean like this higher level of awareness of seeing who's plugged into the program and who's not into the program, that's what it really means to be a reflector, which is really good news that we have this higher level of awareness, because that does make us natural healers, psychics. We already naturally have intuition, gurus, mystics, visionaries. We are naturally those types of people, but we're not effective playing those roles or being those types of people unless we are consciously aware. So we still have to continuously, discover ourselves, so be on the path of self-discovery, and constantly increase our level of awareness and our consciousness to understand who we are. But if you're watching this video and you've already dug deep enough, you're already ahead of the game, more ahead of the game than a lot of other reflectors, because we are, our charts are all white and they are open, so we are prone to certain programming more easily than others. So a lot of reflectors can be lost and confused, and the more lost and confused they are, the more they just kind of like follow with the sheep. But there is still this level of awareness, and then this is where kind of the confusion and the lostness comes in to place. Me personally, I struggled with this. I mean, I've done like 10 years of self-internal work, but before I had come across the human design system, I was using traditional ways, like I was reading self-help books and I was going to talk therapy, but they really weren't answering these questions of like, who am I? And I'm like, why do I constantly change all the time? Why during, one day I can put all of my energy toward this one thing, but then a couple days later, like I'm not completely interested. But, a month later, I can go back to the same thing and finish it and, just have all of these different inconsistencies. So what I thought what that looks like and having that level of awareness is kind of like a split personality. And you do not have a split personality disorder. You do not have personality disorder. I have a master's degree. I can tell you that you do not have personality disorder. What you have is an awareness that there's different aspects of yourself. Now there's different aspects of everybody. It's just that most people aren't aware of it. And just because you are aware of it doesn't mean that the people are aware of it. So you can see this inconsistency and be like, I don't know who the heck I am because I change all the time, where other people that are watching you don't really see that. But that's what I'm here for. I'm kind of to help you understand that. So this can be really tough, especially at first, because what ultimately as a reflector, what you're trying, if you're just coming into this, you might be searching for some kind of consistency, some kind of saving grace, or something that says, okay, this is who you are and this is what you're supposed to do. But that's not like that, and it's not good for you actually to even think of that. As a matter of fact, let's not take any kind of dogma as absolute, because that's not the absolute truth with a capital T. This human design system is really great at guiding reflectors toward that truth. But again, that's something that you have to look within yourself and define that truth. And that's the blank slate. So that's something that you can write yourself. So if you're in the spiritual community and you're just being exposed to all of these different concepts here, understand that eventually you're going to come to a level where you're going to understand everything's going to come full circle. But this is the spiritual community. There are still a lot of like religious dogmas and a lot of different beliefs, and it's very important that you don't get too attached to that and to get too programmed into that, because as a reflector, you're here just really to experience, right? To experience this human life, because it's wonderful, right? It doesn't always feel that way, but you are here, and we are naturally intuitive and empathic. So it's very important that you don't kind of like follow how to increase your intuition type of things, because you already have that. What you need to do is decondition, right? So once you start to decondition and like peel back these layers of like an onion of yourself and look at all of these areas of your life, then your intuition and who you are naturally will just shine through. And then you won't have to focus so much on trying to put your attention on like your aura. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this whole lunar cycle. I know I talked about it a little bit before. So it is that the lunar cycle in the month, and it goes around our chart consistently. So say the moon cycle starts at the new moon. Who you are 2 days after the new moon, you will always be that person 2 days after the new moon. I would recommend like a kind of journal for the whole moon cycle and just kind of see who you are. Now there are human design teachers that can give you a specialized report to give you this information. I don't have one, but if you would like for me to buy one and then maybe do a review on it, I can. Just comment below. But just understand that the moon cycle is consistent. That's what we can rely on, the consistency of the whole moon cycle. And what happens after the whole moon cycle is that at the end we have like a solid definition of who we are. So that's why it's said to wait a lunar cycle. And I cannot stress how important this is. Always wait a whole lunar cycle. And I know this can be hard because we live in a fast-paced world, but wherever you can wait a whole month or a whole lunar cycle to make a decision on something, do it. What happens when you go through this whole lunar cycle is you're going to see a bunch of different perspectives of this decision that you want to make. And at the end of the whole moon cycle, you will have a better understanding of who you are. And then whenever you're able to make that decision is solid. So even though it's slow moving than some other types where they can just make a decision on the top of their head, what's different for us is that even though it is slower, these steps and these decisions are solid. Be okay with surrendering to that. So I know for me, it was really hard when I first came into the human design system, and I was like, I just want consistency. I want to know who I am. Who am I really? Am I this aspect of this person? Am I this person? Am I this person? And it was really hard for me to just surrender to the moon and just say, okay, well, I don't really have that much control over my human life experience anyway. And this can be hard, but once you do surrender to that, it's like the whole weight is lifted off your shoulders, because in truth, nobody really has control over here on Earth. But that's further along down the path. We don't have to talk about that right now, but just understand that you don't really have a lot of control over who you're going to be tomorrow or the next day or the next day. And it's not that it's a bad thing, because being a reflector, being a generator, right, good and bad are terms in a program. That's just another program that we have to deprogram from. It's just that that is who we are, right? And we chose this for a very specific reason. I want to say chose this because we have to take responsibility for being a reflector and experiencing our humanness, and not only just our humanness, but because, if you're watching this video, you're already on a path that of, being in the spiritual community, but like I said, being a healer or an intuitive. So, it's very important that you become aware of yourself. So that way, whenever your aura is connected to like somebody else, you can distinguish that. Because if you can't distinguish that now, then you have to do some deprogramming and uncover yourself. But eventually what you'll notice is that you'll be able to have a better awareness of your own aura and other people's auras. And then whenever you do come into like others' auras, you can kind of back, right? You can step back a little bit and be like, that's not me. And then you can act more authentically in that way. So now we're going to talk about the signature and the not self. So the signature of like surprise and disappointment, and what that means is as reflectors, we are naturally seeking out originality and authenticity in people, but we get disappointed. People just naturally will follow anything, and they're not really living authentic lives. So, as a reflector, we can kind of see that, and it's really disappointing. It's disappointing. I know it is, especially for me, disappointing, because I can see the human potential, and I really don't like victim mentality, and I don't really like a lot of people that feel stuck in certain areas of their life, and it's like, you could be so much better than this, if you just really understood and you were so much more aware of your human potential. But unfortunately, in modern society, we just don't really have that, right? We've got TV telling people what to do. We've got politics that are dictating people, and, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're a reflector, you kind of understand that. But this is your gift, right? This is your gift. This is what you came here to do, to experience, and to have this, like I said, this little bit of a natural higher level of awareness of really what's going on in the world. So that's something that's very special, and we should honor that and not, run from that or just say, well, I'm just going to be like everybody else. No, we don't want to do that. I know I went on a little bit about my perspective of a reflector and being a reflector. I think I covered a lot of important aspects. Like I said, you can check out my blog, and if you're in the process now and you still are feeling a little bit confused, and you know that you need to do a little bit of deprogramming, because if you still have this question of who am I, then you still have to do some deprogramming. And I'm not a human design teacher. Like I said, I'm just a reflector. So the information about the human design, I can definitely do more and provide more content if you want me to. You just have to comment below so I know where to go and what to focus on. I have the 5-1 profile and I have the cross of education, so naturally I don't mind doing it. But like I said, I'm not going to know unless you tell me. Okay, so now I want to read to you from the report that I bought from humandesign.info from Richard Beaumont. Like I said, it was 130 pages long and it was about $100. If you are interested and you want to buy this report and you are a reflector, wait a full moon cycle. That's very, very important. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to share with you here is where all other types are solar types shining out their definition through the sun's programming. You are the only lunar type reflecting whatever you sample from others in the universe around you. So it's really important that you understand this, not just like your home surroundings, because your home surroundings is really important, but also your community. So you have to make sure that you're in the right community and that as well, because you're going to reflect back wherever you're at. So it's very important that you are around the right people. Okay, so it goes on to say, you magnify the conditioning from everyone else around you. However, you have a very special aura that samples the conditioning but does not allow it to penetrate you so deeply. It's like a non-stick aura that samples or tastes the frequency of others and can judge whether they are operating from their own authenticity or from outside conditioning. You are deeply attuned to the universe and the transit field that conditions us all. But unlike the other types, you are not here to resist that conditioning, but rather surrender to it. In a humorous way, you are here to be an agent of the programming from the universe in your representation of the transit field due to your great openness. You are so sensitive to the transit field, you can feel who is simply following that conditioning and who is operating independently of it according to their own inherent uniqueness. Those are the interesting people for you. Now, I think this is so true. I love finding interesting people, and I love going on the internet and finding just what other people would say weird or, not normal people, because I live in a city, so it's kind of really easy to just see people of like the same type. So it's kind of like a treat or a surprise when I can find somebody that's different and that's unique. The report goes on to say, you are able to see all points of view, feel the emotions that are unexpressed, and can speak the truth of what's ever going on. So this is true. So if you're a reflector and you're in a group of people, you can easily reflect back to, everybody else, like what everybody is saying. So this is what makes us natural judges. We can see different perspectives, and we also have the level of understanding these different perspectives without being like too attached to them. So this is what makes us natural judges. And the potential of reflectors. If reflectors were to be organized as the type they are in a sane society based upon human design principles, they would not work regularly. They would not guide others, and they would not consistently initiate. Instead, they would be regarded as the ultimate judge in any dispute or decisions that affect the community. If that were the case, a just, a peaceful, and a fair community would be the outcome. So that's very true, and say they would not work regularly. I don't think any reflector is here to work from a 9 to 5, and if you're a reflector and you're working a 9 to 5, it's probably killing you. We're just not designed consistently for that, right? Generators, manifesting generators, like that's their type of work, and they are 80% of the people, so it's really understandable why the world we live in is the way that we live in. But for a reflector, like, no, 9 to 5 is not us. We don't do that. Another excerpt. You may find a deeper connection with the stars in the cosmic world. Being in nature, away from everything, can be an enlivening process, and you feel a relief from amplifying all of the energies and thoughts of human beings. You may prefer the more innocent auras of children and animals. You may feel a deep yearning or deepen your connection with the universe and become one with totality. Totality is with a capital T. That's important. Indeed, your potential to experience mystical states as a result of this is beyond the reach of all other types. And that's important. I'm going to read that again. Indeed, your potential to experience mystical states as a result of this is beyond reach of all other types. And I say this because when I first entered into the spiritual community, now I was already programmed heavily into Christianity. It was a mess getting out of that deprogramming. But eventually, whenever I did and I crossed over into the spiritual community, it was just really overwhelming because, like I said, I've heard all these terms like energy and being an empath. And what I did was I wanted to search and try to increase my intuition and increase being an empath and like saying, oh, how do I do this when naturally you already are? So it's not hard for us to, we don't have to work hard at being highly intuitive or being an empath or any of that. That's just who we are. It's just that we are so conditioned with all this other junk around us that it's really hard to see or to navigate that. So if you're just kind of entering into the spiritual community and you really don't know which way to go, I would say just be mindful what you're choosing to expose yourself to and to not become too attached to any kind of belief, because we still have our own one perspective and experience. Everybody here on earth is living out their own experience. So even for Ra, his experience was to get this information and to put it forward. Again, it was a tool, right? It's not an absolute truth. It's just a tool to lead us to that absolute truth. And to find that absolute truth, that's when we have to go inside. That's when we have to do our inner work and we have to find out what that divine essence or soul or whatever it is, what that is. And that's something that everybody has, and that's important because that's like you and your purpose and ultimately who you are as this human being, and you know what consciousness wants to experience, or you know however you want to explain that. I really hope that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, comment down below and I can explain that a little bit further, because I know that that notion and understanding yourself and oneness is a little bit like further along down the path. So if you don't understand that, don't worry, eventually you will. All right, so let's move on. The vast majority of reflectors, however, simply try to fit into the status quo of the society and the people around them, unaware of their specialness, surviving in jobs and within families that have no idea how they operate, trying to identify with whatever is around them consistently. This is very true. I know, especially when I was like younger, I wanted something, I would identify with something that was consistent. I just wanted some kind of consistency, something that I could rely on, because I noticed within myself, like my true nature wasn't to be consistent, and being in a world that demands consistency, it's impossible for reflectors to be consistent. So we either have this choice or this option to just kind of go with the flow, which we do because it's really hard to, we have to make a living, we have families, we get caught up in that, or we just kind of like say forget it. And I know a lot of reflectors that just exit out of society, right? They're just going to be the outcasts, they're going to be the weirdos, they don't really care, they don't want any kind of association with modern society, because it's really just a bunch of programming. All right, let's see. So you may battle an ongoing feeling of burnout from both people and your own lack of consistent energy. That's true. So it's important that you make sure that you're sleeping in, I know this might be hard for some people, but if you can, try to not sleep in anybody else's aura. So if it's your spouse or your children, and take into consideration, you know, walls and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that when you are sleeping in your bed, it's away from other people's auras, so that way you're getting a good night's sleep, because you have to regenerate your body. Like I said, this is the human design, so you have to look at, I like to look at the body as a machine, but if you want to look at the body as like a machine and the human design is kind of like the operating manual, you have to make sure as a reflector, because we don't have this inherent defined center to draw energy from, we have to make sure that we're taking care of our bodies as far as like sleep and yes, eating and, you know, exercising, even though I know that that can be really hard to initiate that energy to work out. It's just important that you just monitor your physical being and, you know, your humanness. A few more readings and then I'm going to end this video, but I want to say this, like, so when you're first deconditioning, and say if you've been around somebody for a long time, like a spouse or your children, it's going to feel very weird once you're not around them. And this is what Richard says about that. At first, it's obviously very difficult, and some report that they feel like they're going to die as they become so dependent upon the energy of others. So on this path of self-discovery and awakenings and enlightenments, that you will have as a reflector. If you continue on this path, you're gonna, as you decondition, you will have enlightenments. What's going to happen is a part of you is going to feel like it's dying. And this is where the term like ego death comes in, if you've ever heard that term, because it's something that you attached yourself to. So what happens when we are in different auras, or we pick up different conditionings and we believe them, we attach ourselves to them. And when we attach ourselves to them, we create this identity within our mind. We have to get rid of that identity. And whenever we shed those identities, it definitely feels like a part of us is like dying. So this is kind of the process of that you're just gonna have to go through when you go through deprogramming. That's why I have my book list. That's why I'm here to kind of help people through this process, because it can be really hard, because it's kind of like these little mini deaths. But I guarantee you they're not as bad as they sound, and you shouldn't really be so afraid of death anyway. Just keep that in mind, because it's an illusion. So my final reading is going to be about reflectors in a relationship, and then I'm going to end the video. So if you have any questions, comment them down below. I'll be sure to answer them and get back to you. It's just a lot of information, and I apologize I can't cover everything in one video, but I can give you as much as I know from being a reflector and learning as much as I can about this really unique design system. So what he says, imagine what it's like when somebody gets romantically attached to you as a reflector. What are they getting attached to? Not you, that's for sure, as you are the epitome of oneness with no consistent life force to fall in love with. Yes, you have the potential to be deeply empathetic. It is your nature to know what fairness and justice is all about. The attraction to you can be a narcissistic tendency in your partner, as it can be them falling in love with themselves. You will mirror back an amplified version of your lovers. This is not necessarily a bad thing. Indeed, for those genuinely wanting to understand themselves and reclaim the aspects of their true nature that are buried deep within their own psyches, the aspects of themselves they have rejected in the past, it can be very healing and enlivening experience. So pretty much what this means is just that you need to be very, very careful who you're in a relationship with, because if you, he says narcissistic, I don't think any reflectors kind of to get into a serious relationship and stay in a serious relationship with a narcissist. But I mean, it could happen, but you just have to understand that who you are, and you're plugging into your partner. So essentially they're seeing themselves a lot versus you. So also it's really important that if you can get away from plugging into anybody's energy for a long period of time, it is suggested by Ra to do a whole 30 days. I kind of did that when I started this whole journey of like YouTube, and why I did the videos so consistently to upload them. But it's really, really difficult. I have children. I understand that it's just not really possible unless you live alone and you are a single person to not really plug into other people's energies. But he also does go in to say about children, and if in the relationship involves children, this is a different matter, because the innocent auras of children are like a boon to you, since you have been receiving the twisted hurts and rejects of adults in decades. It's a deep bond you can develop between you and your children, which can become difficult for both when the children naturally need to become more independent and less available. The thing about being a reflector is that we're here to experience, right? We want to experience life. We want to experience just being human, which is why I got like this inspired human, why I use the human, because as a reflector, we understand that humanness is just like a species. We look at it as a species. I don't really look at it as anything else other than that. At least I do. Like I said, reflectors, we just see things from a really bigger picture, and most people don't. So we're very misunderstood because of that, because people literally can't wrap their mind around certain aspects, especially if they have those centers defined. So when people have those centers defined in their charts, that's their fixed perspective, right? They're going to have a fixed perspective on that particular area of their life, where reflectors, we don't, because we are open and we get to experience that. So that's kind of like our unique gift, which is pretty amazing, because so many people in the spiritual community actually have to work really hard to get something that comes so natural to us. So definitely don't take that for granted. And that's it, guys. I hope this video really wasn't too long. I'm not sure yet because I didn't edit it, but again, if I left anything out or if you're still confused, please comment below and we can go from there. And be sure to check out my website, DesireeClemons.com. And also, if you got to come back to this video and definitely go to the blog post, because the blog post is more structured. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and until next time, bye.